Hi, I want to talk about education. I was a teacher and I taught kindergarten to university. I didn't teach the higher university areas, just mainly undergraduate first year as a casual teacher or lecturer. But I taught infants, primary, high school at TAFE, the school certificate equivalent of the higher school certificate. And I taught at university communications. And I taught research methods, just elementary stuff, first year. Now, I also taught at TAFE, as I said, business communications and psychology and some management subjects. So I have a lot of experience. I taught very little bit of history at TAFE, but I studied history at university. I have 5 university qualifications. I'm just giving my background. That doesn't make me a genius. I just wasn't married and did courses to fill in time because I was interested in improving myself. Anyhow, history was once a very important subject, as was English and English literature. They've gone away in importance lately, English literature especially, and history doesn't get much attention. Now, if your aim is to turn out good citizens above everything else, people that can vote sensibly, people that can contribute to the community, then some subjects are very important. 1 is history, and 2 is English and English literature and communications was the 3rd one, which isn't really English, it's related to that area. Now, unless you know what has come before you, what is currently going on, and what might go on in the future if we don't do certain things, then this is extremely important. Of course, all history has a bias, and that's a bit of a problem. But some things are just facts, or pretty close to being facts. If I said the Roman leaders were just as crazy as Donald Trump, maybe even crazier, in the 1st century after Augustus or after the Roman Empire began, might be a better way to put it. That seems to be an opinion, but it's bordering on a fact. So some opinions are bordering on facts. We had Caligula, who wanted to make his horse a consul. We had Nero's behavior as an actor, where no one could criticize him. He always had to win. And there were others just as hopeless. So it's important to know where you've come from. Now, we've had a bias towards European history and American history in Australian schools. Well, we've got to get away from that bias, but still, if you want to know where a lot of the modern world began, was instigated, you have to go to Europe and America. Now, with English literature, this is a story form which everyone likes stories, or just about everyone. And you learn about people and their relationships and their behaviour through great literature. It's a subjective account, but it's the great books. It's hard to determine what the great books are, but those that gel with you and other thinking people, they're the great books. The books are essentially about characters, not so much action, and how characters are moulded by events and situations and other people. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice is about a lot of things, but one of the things it is concerned with, how much reason and how much emotion should be involved in choosing a partner. Pride and Prejudice. One character, the man, had too much pride and the woman had too much prejudice. She has to learn, to some extent, to be less emotional. And Darcy, the male suitor, he's kind of emotional in some ways, but actually he's lacking in emotion. He's a bit too much, full of himself, and too rational. Now, the other characters in the novel are either too emotional or too rational. The sisters of Elizabeth, one is too rational, and there's two young ones that are too dizzy, too irrational. Elizabeth's mother is a bit of a dizzy woman. Elizabeth's father is a bit too rational and sarcastic. There's other characters there, and we could analyse them under the same elements, but we'll just leave it at that now. Now, there's many, many great novels, and they vary tremendously in their approach. But a good novel gets people thinking about life, gets people thinking about serious things that are essential for us to work out in order to run a good family, run a good country. They don't tell us how to run a good country, they just raise issues that we need to think about. They also have, in many cases, a beauty of language, so it's aesthetic as well as psychological and character analysis. Now, communications, that's my area, and I'm not necessarily great at it, even though I taught it. As I've got older, I think a bit more about it. I've got time to think about these issues. But obviously listening is just as important as talking. And you've got to give the speaker your full attention and not interrupt too much, something I do. You've got to listen with an open mind. And you've got to put everything else out of your mind, give the person your attention. The body language you use, like turning the head on the side, leaning forward, having your hands open, and having a friendly visage or look on your face, is also important. Speakers have got to pause often, choose words that are suitable for their audience, break up something serious with some humour, Don't overuse sarcasm. There's lots of things we've got to do. But it's very important that speakers analyse their audience. What's their education? What's their interests? What's their aim in being in this particular room or this particular event? And if people have had something bad happen, sometimes communication can't take place because the bad event is overwhelming them. So it's very important to analyse communications. Now, writing is a separate skill to speaking and listening, and so is reading. And that's all being changed by AI. The amazing thing is you can just put down some random thoughts you have on an issue and say to AI, can you make me a 200-page or 200-word summary of the points I've just raised and put them in an appropriate order for a 12-year-old. And it will do it in impeccable prose and great order. But I'd have to stress that history must be taught as the number one subject. You've got to know who you are, where you came from, where you're going, and what's happening now in other areas of your country and your life. And you've got to try and be fair, not be prejudiced. And that's difficult. Objectivity is one of the aims of history. It's an aim. It's hard for historians to achieve it. Objectivity means being fair, not being centered on your background, your culture, being able to see things with empathy for another group. And that's hard. Okay.